All right, guys, what is going on? Lex here from the MD, helping you succeed on your medical journey with less stress. First of all, sorry for the awkward time. I know it's 12 p.m. currently at Central Time, and the live stream may not be ideal for you guys, but I did it for a few reasons. One, schedule's pretty busy with residency interviews kind of coming along. I have to go out of town today, so I wanted to get you guys this really important video, which is what mistakes do most pre-meds, if not all, make, and how do you avoid it? So we're going to get into that. But for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Lux. I'm a fourth-year medical student here in the United States. I've been doing blogging and vlogging for the last 2 years. You can check out more of my helpful posts at themdjourney.com. Hopefully there's something for you. There's something for pre-meds, there's something for first and second year medical students, and there's something there for people in their clinical rotations. So check out the website after this video, but don't really want to take any more of your time, so let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about the 3 things that pre-meds usually mess up on, and we're going to talk about how to avoid them. That way you can reduce your stress, your anxiety, and often, do the things to kind of make your medical process in terms of getting into medical school much easier. So let's get into the video. So the first thing that most pre-meds mess up on is that they don't distinguish themselves. Tell me if this sounds familiar, especially if you're one of the first couple of years in your college career, your pre-med career. You start your pre-med journey and you're trying to figure out what to do. So you look up online, you realize that you have to join organizations, you have to do community service projects, and you have to do volunteer experiences, research. And so you try to find out what your friends are doing. And so when your friend is joining a club, you join a club. When your friend does research, you do research. But honestly, guys, in terms of being a pre-med, peer pressure is the worst thing that can happen to you, because you're going to do what everybody else is doing. And when you do what everyone else is doing, there's no way to separate yourself. We're going to get into this point a little bit later, but instead, to make your application more distinguishable, to be on paper someone that's much different than every other person that the admission board sees, you need to make sure you kind of start your approach as a pre-med much differently than everybody else. Don't just do experiences for the hell of doing them. Do it very strategically. I talk about this topic called the angle in one of my videos, which is the top 4 qualities you need to have on your application. I'll link it down below, but make sure you check it out after this video because it's super important. But the angle is, there's something about each and every one of you that's watching this video that makes you unique. Figure out what that is. For many of you, it may be your upbringing. It may be where you come from. It may be your major, it may be a hobby you have, and your age. Maybe you're, a non-traditional student. Whatever it may be, fall back on your angle to find out what experiences you should be doing. So I'm going to give you an example because sometimes it doesn't always make sense. So let's say you have a history of being an athlete. You play high school sports or whatnot, and now you're in college and you want to become a physician. So a good way to fall back on your angle, because not everybody had that history of being an athlete. Maybe you're still an athlete in college. You can look for experiences. Maybe you find a sports medicine clinic to shadow or volunteer at. Then maybe you enjoy the aspect of sports medicine because now you're an athlete, you enjoy that part of medicine. So you find a sports medicine research project to do. You find sports medicine related community service projects to do. And then as you kind of find more and more experiences, you're going to find that there's more about medicine than just sports medicine that's going to interest you, but then you start heading in that direction once you find that interest. So when your application is complete and submitted, you have a clear path of an athlete that went into looking into sports medicine, that found research in that field, and so on and so on. You kind of have a nice progression of how you got from point A to B. Versus what a lot of us do, and this is kind of how I started my pre-med journey, is I'm going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I hope I'm doing enough of everything that I'm going to convince somebody I'm interested in medicine. It's much easier to do less experiences if you're that athlete or if you have that angle, and you just do experience after experience that complements your interests versus just trying for the hell of it to fill out your application. So hopefully that makes sense. Find an angle, whatever that may be. Each and every one of you is unique. So don't just say, oh, I'm a typical pre-med, I have nothing to offer. Find what makes you unique, and then evaluate all your opportunities that you're currently doing and saying, okay, am I doing this because I actually care for it? Or does it actually complement my angle and my unique personality, whatever it may be? If it doesn't, if you're just doing it for the sake of it, I would really highly suggest you consider maybe cutting ties and trying to find a path that's going to be much easier. So really evaluate all your opportunities that you're doing. If you're really early on the process, it's a great time for you to just look at saying, okay, like what do I actually care for, and then pick those and then keep going versus just trying to find everything under the sun you could be doing as a pre-med. So hopefully that makes sense. Distinguish yourself by first finding what makes you distinguishable and then continue to find opportunities that complement it. Your final application, guys, is going to be so much more impressive. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any more questions, just make sure you comment down below. But you need to distinguish yourself, and that's how you do it. Number two, we got to talk about studying. It's a big portion, especially because your grades actually do matter in college when you're applying to medical school. So less about grades and more about the actual studying aspect. Pre-meds don't perfect their studying for the long term. So there's several little components in that topic. One is you don't perfect your studying, which means that all of you guys are ideally, when you're applying to medical school, you've improved your grades or you're starting to become a natural A student. So you clearly figured out what works, but you didn't perfect it, which means you're probably still doing stuff. And I ask you to take a good hard look on your studying regimen. You're probably still doing stuff that's not really effective. So you're probably reading the syllabus when you're not somebody that learns from reading. You may still be going to lecture when it's an optional class, but you may not be somebody that actually learns when you are listening. You're not an auditory learner. So evaluate everything you're doing and ask yourself, okay, if I had to spend all my time studying and I would only have to do this technique, would it actually help me? And if the answer is no, then you probably need to consider whether you should be doing it at all. Obviously, if you have to go to class, you can't cut that out completely, but look at everything you're doing. Look at, do you actually need to read the syllabus to get the material you need, or are you just wasting time there? And the reason this is important, guys, is because when you're in medical school, things are going to be coming at a much faster rate. So I'm going to assume you're already in med school, or you're going to get accepted in medical school. That's one of the biggest things you can do for yourself at this point, when you have time to kind of mess around with your study regimen, to find out, okay, this really doesn't work. I'm not going to spend an excessive amount of time doing it. Start cutting ties with things that doesn't work and perfect your studying regimen. Now, the second aspect of what I said, you don't perfect your studying for the long term. We do a lot in college what I like to call test learning, right? So you're only trying to learn for the test that's coming. And then if I asked you a week or two later about info that was on that exam, you probably had no idea what I was talking about. And I mean, I've been there too. But as a physician, you need to expect yourself to learn things for the long term. So make sure that you are doing techniques the same way we were trying to perfect whether or not we needed something in our study regimen. You need to perfect whether or not what you're doing is going to help you remember that info in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. So there's several techniques that I talk about on the YouTube channel. That's called like the brain dump. I talk about the Excel method. I talk about the notebook method. I talk about how to strategically use Anki as a pre-med and medical student. Those videos are all throughout my YouTube channel, so feel free to check them out. At the very end, I'll give you more direction on where you can get more help. But make sure you perfect your studying for the long term. The final thing that I'll give you guys, I don't want to keep this live stream very long because I'm going to assume a lot of you guys are going to be watching the replay, but you want to stop comparing yourself to others. This is a huge thing, and it actually, guys, goes back to point number one and how you can avoid it, which is because a typical pre-med is going to do everything their peers are doing, everything their friends are doing. You're going to eventually get to a point where your applications are going to look the same. And so you're going to have to become extra critical in your own application. And you're going to realize that so-and-so has a little better grade than you in this test or this class. So-and-so has a slightly higher MCAT or a slightly cooler experience. And you're going to have stress and anxiety of whether or not you're good enough to get into medical school because you look like everybody else. And so you're going to realize that everybody else has a little bit more of an advantage than you probably do. So to avoid that, going back to point number one, make sure you have an angle. And if you have an angle, you'll never have to look at your application versus everybody else because you'll be unique. That's kind of how I finished my medical school application process. I knew when I submitted it, no one had an application like mine. So I knew like whatever was going to happen, it was going to be for the best. But I didn't have to compare myself to my peers. So the other thing about comparing yourself to others, because it's not worth it unless you're using it for a motivational standpoint. But most of the time we're not. I like to use this topic or this aspect where you need to focus on your abundance versus your deficiencies. So all of us have something to offer. All of us have done a lot by the time we submit our medical school application. Focus on everything you've done versus everything you haven't. And look at, how much you have to offer a medical school, how much you have to offer as a future physician, and stay in that positive, optimistic mindset, because by the time you submit your application, again, you'll be kind of like me, where you'll just like, okay, I did everything I could. Now it's kind of out of my control. I hope they like me. But get out of comparing yourself to others, because I promise you guys, it gets worse in medical school. So if you make the right habits to where you just do the best you can and you let things carry out the way they're supposed to, you're going to enjoy the process much more. You're not going to be doing those little side eyes where you look at what everyone else is doing. So that's going to be how to avoid that. Make sure you look at abundance versus deficiency, and make sure you fall back on your angle to kind of start on a correct path throughout the rest of your medical journey. So I promised I'd keep this live stream pretty short, but let's go over those three, and I'm going to give you guys some more info on how you can get more information if you want some more help on your pre-med journey. So number one, you need to make sure that you distinguish yourself, and the way you do it is you find an angle, find something that's unique, and then you find opportunities that follow that path versus just trying to reach out and sing what sticks. Number two, you need to perfect your studying for the long term. So ask yourself, do I actually need this to study better? Is it actually helping me on the grades right now? And then two, is it actually helping me to remember stuff in the long term? Will it help me on the MCAT? Will it help me in med school? So evaluate and be really critical of your study regimen, because you'll find that if you do it, you'll start taking things out. You'll have more time for free time, as well as your extracurriculars will make your application look more impressive. Number three, stop comparing yourself to others. Use your abundance, not your deficiencies, and make sure you fall back on your angle to never even have that problem. Final thing, guys, is giving you some insight on where you can go next if you want some more information. So if you enjoyed kind of this layout of like what I should be doing, how to fix it, if you want more help on your studying, if you want more help on like managing your time, how to boost up your CV, which is like the biggest thing, honestly, you guys can do during your pre-med journey, how to study free MCAT, and also kind of how to go through the application process successfully, check out the course down below. It's called the Pre-Med Blueprint, which is what I've created. You guys can see what other students have thought about it. There's also videos that are included for free, so you can kind of see what the course looks like and what it'll be offering you. If you guys have more questions, let me know down below. But you have, I think almost at this point, there's about 50 to 60 videos for you guys on how to be successful as a pre-med. There also is an MCAT calendar, lots of free resources and discounts for the course. And so I just want you guys to check it out if you're interested at all, and then you can decide if it's a good fit for you. But if you guys have any more questions, comment down below. If you enjoyed this video and you're watching the replay or the live stream, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. I'll do every so often, I'll do live videos because I honestly like this much better than always recording and trying to become a little bit more scripted, which kind of fall in the frame of doing when you're watching or when you're recording yourself. So live streams are nice because I can just talk to you guys and give your tips and then move on, and you guys can carry on with the rest of your day. But again, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe, check out the course down below if you're interested, and comment down below with any questions you guys have. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, my friends.